Okay, let's talk about something that has completely changed the game for big business. Not too long ago, a sustainability report was, well, it was basically a nice to have, right? Kind of like a glossy PR brochure, but not anymore. We are living through this massive shift where sustainability reporting is becoming just as critical as financial reporting. Seriously. So, how on earth did we get here, and what does it all mean? Let's dive in and break it down.
All right, first up, the new business as usual. And I mean that literally. What used to be a fringe activity is now just what's expected from the biggest players on the planet.
Check out this number, 96%. That's almost everyone. According to a 2024 KPMG survey, that's how many of the world's 250 biggest companies are now reporting on sustainability. So yeah, we can officially stop calling this a trend. This is the standard now.
And that really gets to the heart of it. This isn't optional anymore. It's not some feel-good thing you do on the side. For these huge companies, it's become a core part of how they operate, right up there with accounting and finance.
So, what lit the fire under everyone? Why did this have to happen? Well, the old way of doing things, all voluntary, was honestly kind of a mess. It was the Wild West. And that's where mandatory reporting comes in, trying to bring some order to the chaos.
People call it the alphabet soup for a reason. For years, if you were a company, you had to pick from this crazy mix of different voluntary standards. You had GRI, you had SASB, I mean, the list goes on. And look, they were all trying to do a good thing, but the result? Total confusion. It was impossible for anyone, especially investors, to actually compare one company to another. It was a classic apples to oranges problem.
And then this happened. Enter the CSRD. That stands for the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. This is the EU's game changer. It's the huge regulatory push that's forcing this whole shift. We're talking about a new framework that makes detailed reporting mandatory for something like 50,000 companies. And get this, it's not just EU companies. If you do significant business in the EU, you're on the hook. It's a really big deal.
So what's actually in the CSRD? Well, a few things make it super powerful. First, as we said, it's mandatory for a ton of companies. Second, it's not just about carbon emissions. It covers the whole range of ESG topics. Third, it brings in this really important idea called double materiality. We'll get to that in a sec. And fourth, and this one is absolutely massive, it demands independent third-party assurance. Think of it like a financial audit, but for sustainability data. That brings a whole new level of trust and seriousness to the table.
Okay, so I mentioned double materiality. What on earth is that? It sounds complicated, but the idea is actually pretty straightforward. It just means companies have to look at sustainability from two directions. First, how do issues like climate change affect the company's finances? That's the outside-in view. And second, how does the company's business impact the world and its people? That's the inside-out view. It's a two-way street, and it forces a much more honest, complete picture.
All right, let's zoom out for a minute. The CSRD might be coming from Europe, but don't think for a second this is just a European thing. The data shows this is a truly global shift.
I mean, just look at these numbers for the top 100 companies by region. The Americas, 97%. Asia Pacific, 92%. It's not just one part of the world driving this. There's clearly a global agreement now that this stuff needs to be out in the open. And here's an interesting point. Even with these new mandatory rules coming in, the old voluntary standards aren't just disappearing. Far from it. The GRI, for example, is still used by a majority of top companies. A lot of these older frameworks are actually the building blocks for the new mandatory ones. They laid the groundwork.
And if you want proof that this is about more than just reporting, look at this. The number of top global companies that have set carbon reduction targets, it jumped from 80% to 95% in just 2 years. That's a massive acceleration. It shows companies are moving from just talking the talk to actually setting real targets.
Okay, so the ambition is there, the rules are there, but how do you actually do all this? Moving from theory to practice is, as you can probably guess, a huge, huge challenge.
This flowchart here from a university thesis gives you just a little taste of how complicated this is. It's not just filling out a form. We're talking about mapping out your entire business, interviewing tons of people, digging up data you've never looked at before, and then building whole new systems to manage it all. This is a massive, company-wide project that takes a serious amount of work.
And this quote from someone actually going through it pretty much says it all. The big obstacle is this takes a lot of resources and a lot of time and still not sort of giving anything back yet. You can really feel the challenge there, right? It's a massive investment of time and money, and the payoff isn't always clear right away.
Let's make this real for a second. Remember that double materiality thing? Here's a super simplified look at what that one piece of the puzzle involves. You have to map your entire value chain, from the mine where the raw material comes from, all the way to how a customer uses your product. Then, you have to figure out every possible impact, risk, and opportunity along that chain. And then you assess it all twice, once for its impact on the planet and people, and again for its financial impact on the company. It's a seriously deep dive.
Okay, so after all of that, the acronyms, the complexity, why should you care? What's the big picture?
Well, here's what it all comes down to. For investors, it means they finally get solid, reliable data they can actually compare. No more guesswork. For employees, it means you can see which companies really live up to their values. And for all of us, as customers, it gives us the information we need to support the companies that are doing the right thing and hold the others accountable.
And that leads us to the biggest question of all. We've got the rules. We've got the mandatory reporting. But is this going to lead to real change? Or are we just getting really, really good at filling out paperwork? That's the billion-dollar question. And honestly, the answer's still up in the air.
Okay, I know we've thrown a ton of acronyms at you. So to wrap this up and help you keep it all straight, here's a quick glossary of the key terms we talked about today. Think of it as a handy study guide.
Let's do a super quick rundown. CSRD, that's the big one, the EU's mandatory reporting law. ESRS, those are the nitty-gritty rules you have to follow for the CSRD. GRI, that's the most popular of the original voluntary standards. SASB, another voluntary one, but this one's really focused on what investors care about financially. And TCFD, this one is all about climate-related financial risks, and its ideas have been a huge influence on everything else. Hope that helps clear up some of the alphabet soup.